let me just give you a little bit of background about myself. My name is Jeff McNeil. I'm the operations commander at Shoal PD, which basically that means I'm over our patrol division and our investigations. I'm also the team commander for the White Mountain Regional Special Response Team.
I'm Lieutenant Martin. I've worked for Snowflake Police Department for 9 years now, and was just recently promoted in March to lieutenant. As a lieutenant, I'm the public information officer, so this is what I do, giving the public the information. Whether it's through these types of trainings, through Facebook, through whatever social media outlet, just trying to inform the public as to what's been going on and what they can do to help themselves and help us along the way.
My name is Scott Badger. I've worked with Navajo County for almost a little over 11 years now. Before that, I was with the military for 20 years in the Air Force, security forces. Pretty much 30 plus years I've carried a gun.
My name is Lieutenant Ken Aaron. I'm with the Winslow Police Department. I've been with the Winslow Police Department for a little over 18 years. My entire career has been Winslow, so I love this community. I know this town. I know the citizens, and I know the people of this town.
If you guys don't know me, I'm Marty Cotto. I've been working with Winslow PD for about 10 years. Before that, I worked for 5 years at Winslow PD.
In 1998, Chief Porter at the time saw a need for a team with a little more expertise than we get on regular patrol. So he put together a 6-man team, all of our police officers, 6 of our police officers from our department. And basically at that time it was called a containment team. We know that in the 1970s, LAPD created the first SWAT team. And it kind of grew from there across the nation for SWAT teams, specialized teams that can handle hostile and volatile situations. So in 98 we had a 6-man team, and basically we were a containment team. And it's just like it sounds. If there was a situation where there was a barricaded subject, a dangerous subject somewhere inside a building or an area that we could contain, that's what we did to keep it from getting out further in the city and causing problems. As we grew into an 8-man team several years later. We trained just like a SWAT team, even though we were a containment team. We did all the things. We did high-risk search warrants for the drug task force at the time. But basically, if there was anything that involved a gun or any kind of threat like that, we just held it until a SWAT team could come from Flagstaff or DPS in the valley. And then it got to a point where we had a situation that we were containing it. We called the other team, but it was escalating, and we could tell it was escalating. So we told our chief, hey boss, we can do this. And we ended up handling the situation, and from there on, we kind of used outside teams as a supplement, because of that team. About 7-8 years ago, the team leader that works with me, Sergeant Jason Spear, that's over the team, we started exploring a multi-region team. So we got with county, they were on board. We've got 4 or 5 of their deputies. We've got officers from Snowflake, Taylor, Pine Top Lakeside, and now Holbrook. So now, in the last year, we're working with Apache County, the agencies in Apache County, to be a 2-county multi-region team so that we can eventually get up to 32 operators. What we're going to talk about today is a little bit about how active shooter or threat has come about. Initially, when this started coming out and SWAT teams started going it was called active shooter because primarily that's what you see in the news. But we're now moving it to a little bit more to an active threat. How many have seen things around the world, like in Asian countries or England, where people being subway stations where somebody's just running through and slashing people? Okay, so that's why we call it an active threat. It doesn't have to be a gun. It can be an improvised explosive device. It can be any of those things. Anything that causes mass casualty or death. So that's why we call it an active threat. It can be any of those things that we deal with.
So the reason why we train as hard as we do on situations like this, and the reason why we focus a lot on these types of things, is 1927, Bath Township, Michigan. A gentleman, employee, custodian of the school. As you can see, this is the school here. He was having some issues with financial problems with the government, and so one day he decided that he wasn't going to take it anymore. He shot and killed his wife, and then proceeded to firebomb his own property, and then took the fight to his school. As soon as everybody was in the school, he locked down the school from the outside, set fires, set off explosives, and then waited for people to come out and shot him as they ran out.
This one remembered by anybody? That was the tower one. clock tower, right? In the middle of University of Texas. How was that problematic to the police at that time? Guy's got a hunting rifle with a scope, and he's up in a tower. Do you remember seeing a picture of that? What's the terrain around that tower?
It's all open, yeah.
Yeah, wide open. What are the police armed with? 6 shooters, wheel guns? Maybe a guy had a shotgun or two. It's not like law enforcement today, makes sense. So it finally took somebody to attack the tower and go up in there and get him. There's just no other way to do it.
In '98 in Jonesboro, Arkansas, I believe was kids at a school, 2 kids, 10-year-old if I'm not mistaken, started, one of them pulled the fire alarm and the other one basically shot people as they came out the door.
Situation on Columbine is the 2 students developed a well-thought-out, well-planned assault on this school. They had over 99 explosive devices. They planned out diversionary tactics for fire and law enforcement. They planned out locations on mass gatherings where the students were going to be, the largest pool, libraries, cafeteria, what times those were going to be. It's a well thought out, well planned, well organized assault on the school.
I throw Tucson in here because it happens in Tucson. This was a guy who was upset with the nursing school at the University of Arizona, went into the nursing school and killed 4 there. A lot of these you don't hear about.
2006, a gentleman walked into an Amish community and shot 6 students in an Amish community at a school. And I put that one in because that came from an outside source. That guy, the suspect, was not Amish. He came from an outside place to take the fight to a very peaceful, very small, very religious community, which is very similar to what we have here. Very small, very peaceful, very calm and religious community. And someone came in here, into their facility, into their community, and brought the fight to them. So it doesn't always have to happen from within. It can be brought from without as well. And then Virginia Tech in 2007. Next to Bath Township, that is the highest.
So here we have school shootings by decade. 1920s, 1. These are school shootings. I know we're going to integrate it into the business side of it and you'll get it. 1960s, 2. 1970s, 5. 86. What happened in the 1990s? Why did it quadruple? How about the starting of the age of computers, video games, media? Prior to the 80s, my daddy's remote control with the rabbit ears. Okay? How many stations did I have up here? 4. What time did they turn off? Huh? Midnight? Yeah. Everything's dead, right? Okay, so you see how things are changing? Now we have access to all these channels. I have like 380 channels and I watch 6. So 38 in 9 years. We didn't even get a full decade out of there and look at how much it's risen. 2010, and it says current, that was probably a 2-year period. I'll be curious to go back and change this after we get done with these classes the next 2 weeks because I'll bet you this number is pretty extreme. When I was a teenager in the 80s, our video games consisted of Pong. A ball. Who has teenage kids now? Anybody got a teenage kid? They play video games? You ever look at them? Pretty impressive, aren't they? The graphics. How many have seen the video games today? I mean, you really have to look to see if that's a computer person or a real person on the screen. And the graphics are very vivid. And what are most of the games about? Killing, robbing, stealing, all the depravities of the world. So that's what our kids are playing today. What happens if they get shot in a video game while they're playing a video game? Reset, okay? So these kids who just sit and play, killing's nothing to them because they do it all the time on the screen. And a lot of these shooters are usually one in these active shooters or these multiple killing situations. They're typically by themselves. Columbine was 2. The San Bernardino one recently was 2. But a majority of them are one person. And so what they have found is they typically are loners, outcasts in school, picked on, bullied, whatever you want to call it. They finally hit their point, okay? And now what happens? Everybody wants to be liked. I've never met a person in this world that doesn't want to be liked by somebody. They don't necessarily have to be the most popular person, but they like to be liked.
These are just some of the possible causes of what might be changing it. We're starting to live in a more violent world, whatever the causes are. You know, we're bombarded constantly by news events, social media, the internet. There's a lot of different things that cause this. And, you know, there's not really any one way to narrow it down. There's a lot of different motivating factors for the type of person that's going to do an active shooter or a mass shooting. It's not always just school related. A lot of materials we're going over today kind of go back to some of the school shootings. A lot of people are familiar with that kind of stuff from stories they've read or seen on TV. It's something that's happening more and more outside of the schools and in the workplace or anywhere else.
2012 was one of the worst years for mass shootings in modern history. So now we're going to integrate some of the business side of it, okay? So here's a guy at a health spa. 4 killed plus the shooter. High school cafeteria. I mean, we've already talked about the high schools. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. 1 killed and shooter injured. At a psychiatric hospital. Here's another one. University classroom, 7 killed. Coffee shop. Right? Remember I told you about your situational awareness? Doesn't hurt.
This guy here changed the way we viewed movies and theaters forever. Okay? We go to the movies to relax, to have other people entertain us. We pay to sit in a nice, dark, cool, air-conditioned room to relax and be entertained. Well, he decided he was going to change that. Killed 12 people and injured 58 in one event at a theater.
Place of worship, a Sikh temple. 6 killed, 3 injured, plus shooter. A sign company. Okay? What do you think probably happened in that one? Disgruntled employee. Talk a little bit about that here later on. Another spa. Apparently ladies don't go to spas. Bad. Anybody recognize that face? Okay, that was the Newtown, Connecticut. 27 killed, plus shooter. These idiots make the news. And they talk about it. Why did it happen? This and that. And they talk about it for a week, and their name keeps getting brought up and brought up and brought up. So the next person who's sitting there is depressed and bummed with life and decides, I want to kill some people. What did he score? I got to beat him so that I make the news. Otherwise, it's not worthy. What was it, 3 days now? Seattle? 4 killed on mall shooting. That hasn't hit the news for very long, did it? It's already off the news pretty much that I've seen the last 2 nights. Okay? You've now got to score in the 10s and the 20s to make the news. How many have heard of a guy named Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman? If you're a reader and you like to read about stuff like this and you want to learn more about why people do what they do in these school shootings, he writes a great book called On Killing. Significant change in police response. Prior to the Columbine event, police would not make immediate entry to any situation where gunfire was actively going on. They would hold the perimeters around schools and buildings, wait for their orders from their bosses, and then they would call SWAT. So I asked at the Columbine, I said, did they do anything wrong? No. They did as they were trained. Up until this event, that's how they were trained. You've got a guy in there shooting, they had the perimeter around the school. They can hear the little explosions going off in the school. They can hear the gunfire. They can hear the screams, I'm sure. But this is how they were trained. SWAT's on their way, SWAT's on their way, SWAT's on their way. And that's what they had to deal with. In short, police waited. So I submit that they didn't do anything wrong, they just did as they were trained. And since that time, we've learned a lot. We learned over the last several years, probably 10 years ago, it was about every 15 seconds. It is now down to 8 seconds. So, you're at work, you're in a big building like this, I hear some gunfire upstairs. How long does it take a regular person at work here was like, what was that sound? You will literally be like, what the heck was that sound? Until you start hearing somebody scream or whatever. Okay, so we've got a few seconds, it might take you if you hear several. Now how long does it take you to call 911? Okay, how long does it take you to get that information that you have, panicked information, over to dispatch? Now, how long does it take dispatch to get you to calm down for a second so they can get it out to the officers? So we'll say that's 2 minutes. How many people potentially can be shot in 2 minutes? Now I'm 2.5 minutes away from running full speed. If I'm up in the Lowe's, Home Depot area, and I get a call the other side of town running code 3, lights and siren, okay, it can take me 7 to 8 minutes to get across town. The average officer. So I cut it down to 6, okay? But you get an idea that it's time consuming.
We definitely know that waiting causes more casualties. They target high volume areas, whether that's a student area, whether that's a cafeteria inside of a mall, a theater. They are targeting high volume mass casualty areas where they can inflict the most damage.
And again, they're trying to create the highest body count for notoriety. That's what they think is going to get them on the news, and that's what they think is going to make their name infamous forever.
We've also learned that one officer heading in the direction of the shooter will pretty much end the fight. We've learned that they hear the sirens, majority of them, 90% of them plus, you guys end up committing suicide. Some businesses have security on site, hospitals and stuff like that, and SRO is a school resource officer. So we put that in for your schools. So if they can take those guys out, they'll do that first.
One of the things they learned is that an officer running the way of the gunman will probably end the fight. Again, they don't want that armed confrontation with another armed person, so they're gonna stop and either give up or shoot themselves or let the police shoot them when they get that one officer. So that's the way we train it now, is in an active shooter situation where there are shots being fired and lives at risk and lives being taken, the first officer on scene runs in and takes care of business without any backup if that's what needs be. They are trained, and we train across the board, across the country, that it is a one-man show. And then when other officers come, they will come to help you. But if you are the first on scene, you are responsible and you are trained to take that on.
How will police respond? You'll see everybody from me to Bobby to anybody from different agencies. May or may not have uniforms on. Hopefully they get some kind of markings on. But it's not unlikely. With our department, we have a all-page thing, and I'm pretty sure most every department has that now. If we've got an actual thing, we're going to send out an all-page, I need all hands on deck, and guys be coming in a pair of shorts and jeans and throw on their police vest. So they're not going to have an actual uniform, so don't expect that all the time. They should have some marking of police before we send them in the building, but don't expect the typical uniform, because some guys literally come from home or the gym. When officers respond on scene, people have been shot, people are injured, people are dying. 1 or 2 officers will respond directly to the sound of gunfire threat. Okay, that's why we train them. If they arrive on scene, they're not hearing anything, we ask them to slow down. Okay, keep your awareness, gather your senses. You're not hearing anything. Okay, that allows 2 things. It allows Officer Martin to get here, Lieutenant Martin to catch up with me, and we can be better as a team. We will do it as an individual, but we're better as a team. So if I'm walking through a building, Lieutenant Martin catches up, we're moving through the building, now we hear gunfire, we're gone. Now anybody else responding will have to work their way through it, okay? But if he's there and I'm there, basically if he's already walking through the building, and I come in and I say, hey, Bobby Law Enforcement, Shoal PD coming up, and I catch up. Because he's focused on one thing. You guys don't understand until you've been to a training how focused you have to be. These guys are not doing this number and looking all around. They're pretty focused, and they're scanning with their eyes here and here. You won't see a lot of head movement. This is the part that people will be like, why? Why would we pass injured patients? Still got a threat. Still got a threat, right? Still go back to that 8-second rule, correct? We don't like it either, okay? Believe it or not, we don't like injured people. We don't like hurting people. So we want to get them help as fast as we can. But we can't do that until the threat is stopped. Because
real quick, when we were Jeff was talking about the SWAT school that we go to in Utah County, very midway through, they put us through They put us through a simulated active shooter scenario at a school with about 200 students and faculty that are actors. They paint them up with
injuries with head wounds, with arms, with gunshot wounds, leg gunshot wounds, whatever the case may be. These kids are just laying all over the floor throughout the school. And there are shots going on, explosions going on in the school and things like that. And we come in as a 40 to 50 man SWAT team to take care of this problem. The hardest thing I had to do was kick a 10-year-old off my leg from grabbing my leg as I walked past and tell him, you gotta let me go, because there's still a threat in the cafeteria. He was in the gym. I literally had to push him off of my leg as I walked by so that I could go by and stop the threat that was continuing to go. That's exactly what they expected us to do, but I have a 10-year-old at home. So I'm kicking my kid off of my leg. Yeah, it's a scenario, but still.
Police will evacuate and provide aid after the threat is stopped. We kind of talked about that. You see on the bottom there's the priority of life. This is how we operate once we get inside. We will protect and help the victims and the injured first, and any hostages. Then we'll protect our community and our citizens. Then the police. So this is all in the injury prone. So once we get that threat stopped, now we'll go back and start taking care of victims, making sure that threat didn't get out into the community. And then we'll have our police, our injured police. They come third on this. Why does the suspect come last? Right, he started it, right? So we're gonna show about a 5.5 minute video. It's called Run, Hide, Fight.
It may feel like just another day at the office, but occasionally, life feels more like an action movie than reality. The authorities are working hard to protect you and to protect our public spaces. But sometimes bad people do bad things. Their motivations are different. The warning signs may vary, but the devastating effects are the same. And unfortunately, you need to be prepared for the worst. If you were ever to find yourself in the middle of an active shooter event, your survival may depend on whether or not you have a plan. The plan doesn't have to be complicated. There are 3 things you could do that make a difference. Run, hide, fight. First and foremost, if you can get out, do. Always try and escape or evacuate, even when others insist on staying. Encourage others to leave with you, but don't let them slow you down with indecision. Remember what's important, you, not your stuff. Leave your belongings behind and try to find a way to get out safely. Trying to get yourself out of harm's way needs to be your #1 priority. Once you are out of the line of fire, try to prevent others from walking into the danger zone and call 911. If you can't get out safely, you need to find a place to hide. Act quickly and quietly. Try to secure your hiding place the best you can. Turn out lights, and if possible, remember to lock doors. Silence your ringer and vibration mode on your cell phone. And if you can't find a safe room or closet, try to conceal yourself behind large objects that may protect you. Do your best to remain quiet and calm. As a last resort, if your life is at risk, whether you are alone or working together as a group, fight. Act with aggression. Improvise weapons. Disarm him. And commit to taking the shooter down, no matter what. Try to be aware of your environment. Always have an exit plan. Know that in an incident like this, victims are generally chosen randomly. The event is unpredictable and may evolve quickly. The first responders on the scene are not there to evacuate or tend to the injured. They are well trained and are there to stop the shooter. Your actions can make a difference for your safety and survival. Be aware and be prepared. And if you find yourself facing an active shooter, there are 3 key things you need to remember to survive. Run, hide, fight.
The important aspect of the video that I kind of want to bring out to you guys is they put it in an order for a reason. Because those are your options, 3 options that you have: run, hide, or fight. And preferably, I would like you to run down those options in that order. If you can get out, do it. Run. With as many people as you can, by yourself, doesn't matter. And they're absolutely correct on the video. Don't let anybody tie you up. Don't hold back for somebody. People respond to high-stress situations very differently. Somebody might just absolutely shut down and not want to go anywhere. If there's an exit, use it. If you have somebody that's shut down and won't go with you, I'm sorry. The important aspect right now is you. You have got to get out. Do it. You're going to have to leave that person behind.
Evacuate. Have an escape route plan in mind. Leave your belongings behind. Keep your hands visible. This is when we've come to get you. Okay? Or you evacuate yourself in this run part. Don't worry about your purse. Don't worry about just get. If you have a chance to get. Okay? So when we talked about situational awareness, when you go into your work, when you go in, do you know where all the exits are in the building? Okay? You know probably from your office or your cubicle or wherever you're at how to get out 2 ways. But what if you're not there? Or if you're talking to a coworker on the other side of the building? Start to know your building is what I'm getting at. Pretty plain and simple. Know your buildings inside and out.
Hide out, if that's an option, okay? Just like in the video where the lady had pushed the copier. If you're gonna push the copier in front of the door, the whole copier better be across the door. So if you can, block the entry to your hiding place and lock the doors. Most businesses have these type of door jambs where this, the hinge, okay? When it's closed, it's pretty narrow. And if you can take your belt off and wrap your belt around that hinge and tie it down tight, that door's never coming open until the belt comes off. They cannot pull it hard enough to break that mechanism and get it open. They'll anticipate it's locked and move on. Again, they are high score in a very short period of time. They know the cops are coming. They know they don't have very long. So they want to get through it as quickly as they can and make the biggest number they possibly can at the same time. So they come across a locked door, they're just gonna bypass it. They're not gonna fiddle around with the door and try to break in a door that's locked. There's no guarantee anybody's even in there to begin with, okay? They're gonna go to open doors and unlock doors before anything else. They actually make a mechanism now that you slide right over that in an event of a school lockdown, and the door will never come open until that thing comes off.
Generally, people by nature are not extremely violent. Most people. Active shooter situation, detachment, separation from reality, very violent. Normal, sane, social people are not really that violent, but you gotta flip a switch in your head, and it's either him or you, and you gotta make that choice, and you gotta commit. You can't engage somebody halfway and then say sorry, sorry, sorry. It doesn't work that way. You gotta commit to it, and commit full-heartedly everything that you've got.
So there's several things that we talk about in law enforcement. It's called a decision-making process here, acronym. And we call it the OODA loop. So to do anything, we observe first, orient ourselves to what we're trying to do, and we decide, and then we act. Those are 4 things that you have to do before an action takes place. So if I'm a bad guy and I want to kill a bunch of people, I've got to observe first. Then I got to orient myself around the area where I'm at, or where I want this to take place. Then I finally got to come to the point of deciding to do this, correct? And the last part is to act. Okay? So as law enforcement officers, when we're dealing with bad guys, we want to disrupt this process somewhere in here. Okay? If we get called to an active shooter, we're in this scene, okay? But somewhere once he's inside, he is starting this process over again, because now he's inside. He's got to observe his situation, where he's at, orient himself to that situation, decide what he's going to do next and act, okay? So when we get to that point, we've got to disrupt some point in there. Why? Because anytime we do that, they've got to start over, okay? If he's in this certain part of the process inside the school, if he's in the orient and decide act and he hasn't acted yet, and we disrupt that, he's got to start over, because we just added a new stimulus to that. We just screwed him up. So the point why I'm telling you that is we have little things, and you can just equate it to a paintball gun, but we call it simulations in law enforcement. So we actually get to use guns like these, actual trigger pulls. It's got a little bullet with a little primer, and it shoots something out really hard. And as I told people, the last training we had almost a month and a half ago, I still got a wound right here, still hasn't healed, and I've got a scar right there from the last one. Overzealous actor, not me. So anyway, but they take months to heal, so they really give you instant feedback on what you do wrong. So this one of the students was pulled out. He got to be the bad guy, and he just said, "Go kill as many as you want. Here's your row classrooms. Go handle it." Didn't give him anything else. He was able to shoot any of us. The last room with tennis balls. As soon as he entered that door with the gun open, everybody flung tennis balls. What did he do? Get back the hell out. We disrupted him. He was in between the decision and the act mode as he came in the door, and we introduced the stimulus of throwing stuff at him. Wrecked his whole world. Not one of us had a gun. He had the gun, and he was free to shoot any one of us. So all we did was just throw tennis balls. Okay? Does that make sense on that? When we have to fight, anything becomes a weapon.
Great question. I am not going to tell you just because you have a CCW to engage. That is a choice that you guys have to make if you're a carry. Welcome to Arizona. Everybody can carry. I love this state. Okay?
If you take any action, say you neutralize the threat yourself, or maybe you don't. What you want to do is eliminate the idea that responding officers see you as a possible threat, that maybe you're the guy that's doing it.
Exactly.
So maybe you went ahead and decided you're going to do something about it, you stopped the threat. At that point, you got to kind of either put your gun down or put it away or do something to minimize the idea that when the responding officers, we might not even know you, It could be somebody from another agency. You know, we don't know who you are. And so you want to make yourself not be the threat.
So, yeah. If you engage, you eliminate it, follow commands of law enforcement, make sure your hands are empty, they're open, they're displayed. Are we going to put you on the ground? Are we going to cuff you up? Yes, we are. Are we going to secure you, make sure that you're safe? Yes, we are. Yes, we are. And we will sort through the process of your heroic act after. But we're going to engage you, and we're going to make sure that you're safe and not part of this threat first. And then we'll sort through the rest of it later.
I want to add one more thing. If you haven't taken action yet, maybe you happen to have your concealed carry gun with you, and the officers are on scene, the same thing applies. I wouldn't be getting my gun. I probably wouldn't even be telling the officers I got my concealed permit, I have my gun with me, because that officer's going to have to address that. They're going to have to deal with you now. They don't know who you are, and now here's a guy with a gun. You know, and you could be perfectly well within your rights, not involved in the situation, but they're going to have to take the time to figure that out, and probably going to have to secure you in handcuffs so that they were able to continue.
A lot of people want to ask questions and say, well, what do I do if this happens and this happens? There's no absolutes in our job. So when we say run, hide, fight, there's not an absolute. But what if he comes in? Should I run? Should I hide? No, these are tools in your belt. You have to make that decision. I can't give you that information.
Okay, when law enforcement eventually arrives, this is what we expect. We want you to remain calm and just follow the police instructions, okay? Like I said before, keep your hands up, do exactly as you're told. What they found in the school lockdown in Show Low and what they found at the Holbrook incident was now Bobby Martin, who is my friend and comes to the courthouse quite often and brings warrants and gets warrants signed by Judge Peterson. Now there's an active threat in the building, and I am coming in with my complete police gear on with an assault rifle, and I am barking orders and yelling at I don't care who it is. That was very disheartening and very emotionally stressful for those people in that event at Holbrook as well as at the school. Normally the staff at the school sees us as the SRO, the students or the officers coming in and, hey, we're going to do a lockdown drill, put everybody on lockdown. All right, cool. I'm going to go up to the door, knock on the door, make sure it's locked, make sure they don't say anything when I knock on the door. And then I'm going to say, okay, hey, it's Lieutenant Martin. I'm just here to check everything. Is everybody all right in there? And then they'll open the door and tell me everything's okay. And it's very happy, go lucky. We know it's a training drill. Well, now I'm coming in with a helmet on, riot gear on, an AR slung across my chest that is being pointed at every single person, regardless of their age or anything. Doesn't matter. It's a completely different feel when it's a real life scenario, and they were not prepared for that. They were very emotionally distraught over that. And so it's these kind of things that you just got to anticipate, be ready. Like I said, raise hands, spread your fingers, keep them visible at all times, avoid pointing or screaming. It's going to be chaotic as it is already. We don't need it getting any more chaotic when we're trying to ask you questions and you're just screaming back at us when just random stuff that we didn't even ask you. Avoid making quick movements towards the officers or attempting to grab them or hold on to them. And then don't ask for directions from the officer. If you're listening close enough, the officer will tell you, follow behind where I just came out of. Obviously, the officer clearing that entire pathway has made that safe. That is your safest route of egress, is directly behind where the officer just walked through. Okay? You're going to meet more officers outside, I guarantee you.
During these active shooters and scenarios, the officers really don't know who the shooter is. It may be just anybody among anybody. So the hands is really important, that's what they're looking at. If we're coming up here and there's just only me and Officer Tom that's available, and you're refusing to get your hand out of your pocket, we're neither gonna take you down really fast or you're gonna end up in the ER. So those hands, we need those hands up there. That's really critical.
Let's talk about cell phone use right now. If you don't have pertinent information, like valuable information, please don't get on 911, okay? Especially in school settings, when we talk about schools or stuff like that, all the kids have phones, all the teachers have phones. It doesn't, for those of you who don't know, it doesn't take much to clog a 911 line to where no information can get to police, no information comes back to you. So what we teach our schools is, in an event like this, get everybody's cell phone.
So if I had Mary here, and she's our suspect, what would you tell me are the best physical descriptors to give of Mary to a cop?
Red hair, red coat.
Okay, red coat, glasses, okay. Female, okay. Okay, so Mary gets very hot in her exercise of shooting people at the courthouse and decides to take her coat off. Now what? I am not looking for a red coat anymore. And you told me to look for a red coat. She walks right past me as a victim, and I push her out the door. Go, 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 because now she's not my suspect. Okay, so when we're talking about physical descriptors, thank you, Mary, we're talking about the stuff they cannot immediately change. Their hair color, facial hair. Glasses are okay, but they can take them off, put them in a pocket. Especially now during wintertime, everybody wears a coat. And in these events, you're gonna get hot very quickly, and the first thing they're gonna do is take their coat off. By far, sex, hair color, style of hair, facial hair, and race are by far the most important things to get out, because they can't change those at the drop of a hat. They're stuck with that. This is more for employees that you work with. Pay attention to those behavioral clues like posture, speech, and their restlessness or pacing. You work around these people every day, 40 hours a week, if not more. You will notice behavioral changes and clues with them more than anybody else except for their family that lives with them. You spend more time with them during the week than probably their family does. I know people at my job and outside of the community spend more time with me than I do my own kids.
History of abuse as a child, some of the things that we talked about, loners at school or work. We talk about history of violence, frequent, serious, unprovoked. A little bit off topic, domestic violence. And they typically, if I meet a couple in this world that has never argued, I'll probably die of a heart attack. It's a natural thing, and I tell people that all the time. Couples are going to argue. You can't get along 100% of the time. It's natural. But what we tell people about in domestic violence situations, arguing becomes more frequent, more louder. Then it starts to what? Sergeant Badger, what goes next after arguing? You might grab her, shake her, vice versa. After that, what does it become? Well, I don't want to hit her, so I'm going to punch or break something in the wall. Okay? I'm going to break a TV, I'm going to break her phone. What goes after that? Each incident keeps escalating. It's kind of the same thing with violence in the workplace. Okay? It may start out as verbalization, drawings, something you might see, plans, and that's where it kind of goes.
So we're trying to kind of raise a little bit of your awareness, it's hard to expect everybody's not the same.
Right.
We all don't have that same level of situational awareness. That's kind of one of the goals and purposes of even having this discussion in class with you guys today. If you kind of just take a little time to pay attention to your surroundings, or kind of plan ahead on what would I do if this happened. You say whether you were at work or if I was at the store, how would I react if somebody came in shooting? If you just give it a little forethought, then when it happens, if it does, you're not trying to come up with a plan, you've already kind of thought about it. And that's the thing. And when you're coming and going just anywhere, at the movies or a restaurant, anywhere, you may not necessarily have to demand a certain seat, but if you just kind of pay attention and have a little situation awareness going,